You threw away the woman who owned everything you wanted. My hands were shaking as I held that lawyer's letter. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might just give out right there in my little kitchen on 16th Avenue. The words kept blurring together, but one number stayed crystal clear: $38 million. They had no idea what I was about to do with their betrayal. I'm Bonnie Jean Crawford, I'm 72 years old, and I'm here in my beautiful new kitchen at Crawford House in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. But 3 years ago, I was facing eviction from a tiny rental house with $847 in my checking account, abandoned by the 3 children I'd raised while working nights for 47 years. What they didn't know, what nobody knew, was that I'd been scrubbing floors for a company that belonged to my own family. And when I inherited that empire, I decided to teach them what real family actually looks like. Now, if you're listening to this while you're having your morning coffee or folding laundry, maybe taking a quiet moment for yourself, I want you to hit that like button right now, because each like is so important to help my voice reach other women who need to hear this story. And subscribe to Grandma's legacy, because no woman should ever feel thrown away by her own children. Let me paint you a picture of how this all started. It was November 15th, 2019, and I was sitting at my little Formica table, the same table where I'd served thousands of meals to my kids, helped with homework, bandaged scraped knees. The eviction notice was right there next to my coffee cup, giving me 30 days to come up with $200 I didn't have. My arthritis had gotten so bad I couldn't hold a mop anymore, and after 47 years of night shift cleaning, I had nothing to show for it but worn-out knees and a Social Security check that barely covered groceries. That's when my oldest, Michael, he's 48 now, sells insurance down in Des Moines, called with his brilliant solution. "Mom, maybe it's time we looked into Shady Oaks Assisted Living. It's only $3,400 a month, and they have activities." Only $3,400 a month. Like I was supposed to pull that out of thin air. My daughter Rebecca chimed in from Waterloo, where she's a dental hygienist, suggesting I needed therapy to understand healthy boundaries. And my youngest, Danny? Well, he was too busy living rent-free in my basement and eating my food to offer anything except suggestions that maybe I should downsize to a studio apartment. 47 years I'd worked nights at Midwest Commercial Cleaning Services. 47 years of coming home at 6 a.m. with bleach-burned hands and an aching back while they slept in warm beds I paid for. 47 years of $12.50 an hour so they could have school clothes and birthday parties and college funds I emptied for their dreams. Now I was the burden they needed to tuck away somewhere convenient. Looking back now, I see how perfectly it was all planned by the universe. Because sometimes the people who throw you away are the very ones who end up teaching you what you're really worth. And honey, what I learned about my worth was going to shock them all. But first, let me tell you about the life I built with nothing but determination and love, back when I still believed that was enough. Cedar Rapids in 1972 was a different world entirely. Nixon was president, gas cost 36 cents a gallon, and a woman like me, 22 years old with a high school diploma and big dreams, could still believe that hard work would solve everything. I'd married my sweetheart Earl Crawford right out of high school in 1969. He was a good man, worked construction during the day, but construction in Iowa meant feast or famine depending on the weather and the economy. When Michael was born in 1974, we were living in a tiny apartment on the southwest side, and Earl's construction work wasn't steady enough to pay the bills. That's when I saw the classified ad in the Cedar Rapids Gazette. Night cleaning crew wanted. Midwest Commercial Cleaning Services. $3.25 hour. Apply in person. $3.25 an hour seemed like a fortune back then, and working nights meant Earl could watch the baby while I worked. I'll never forget walking into that office building on Collins Road NE for my interview. The manager, Tom Peterson, was a gruff man in his 50s who looked me up and down like he was evaluating a piece of equipment. "Can you handle working alone? Can you lift 30 pounds? Can you keep your mouth shut about what you see in these offices?" I nodded to everything. I needed that job more than pride. What I didn't know was that Tom Peterson worked for Robert Crawford, Earl's uncle, the brother Earl hadn't spoken to since some family fight back in the 1960s. I had no idea that the Crawford family had quietly built a cleaning empire across 3 states. All I knew was that I had steady work and a paycheck every 2 weeks. Those early years were the hardest of my life. I'd get home from cleaning at 6 a.m., sleep until noon, then take care of Michael while Earl looked for work. When Rebecca came along in 1977, followed by Danny in 1980, the juggling act became even more impossible. Earl would get home from whatever construction job he'd found that week, grab a quick dinner, and then watch the kids while I headed out with my cleaning cart at 10 p.m. The buildings I cleaned were beautiful: law offices with mahogany desks and leather chairs, medical centers with spotless equipment, corporate headquarters with views of the Cedar River. I'd vacuum their thick carpets, dust their expensive furniture, scrub their marble bathrooms. I got to know every corner of those places better than their own employees did. The doctor's offices always smelled like disinfectant and fear. The law firms had this heavy, serious atmosphere even when they were empty. The corporate buildings hummed with the sound of cleaning equipment echoing through empty hallways. Sometimes I'd pause while emptying a trash can next to some executive's desk and look at the family photos there. Smiling kids in expensive clothes, vacation pictures from places I'd only seen in magazines. I'd wonder what it would be like to have enough money to take your children to Disney World or buy them new bikes instead of fixing the old ones with duct tape year after year. But I was building something important, or at least I thought I was. Every dollar I earned went toward making our children's lives better. When Michael wanted to play Little League, I picked up extra shifts to pay for his uniform and equipment. When Rebecca showed interest in dance lessons, I cleaned additional offices on weekends to afford them. When Danny needed speech therapy, I worked double shifts for months to cover what insurance wouldn't pay. Earl tried his best, but construction work in Iowa was unpredictable. Some years he'd make decent money, but then a harsh winter would hit, or the economy would slow down, and he'd be lucky to work 3 days a week. My cleaning job became our foundation, the steady income we could always count on. By 1985, I was making $5.50 an hour and cleaning 12 different buildings across Cedar Rapids 5 nights a week. The irony kills me now, looking back. I was so proud of my work ethic. Tom Peterson always said I was the most reliable cleaner he'd ever hired. "Bonnie, you're gold," he'd tell me. "These buildings have never looked better." I took pride in doing excellent work, in being trusted with keys to million-dollar facilities, in being the person they could count on no matter what. What I didn't understand was that every building I cleaned, every office I scrubbed, every bathroom I sanitized, it all belonged to my husband's family. The Crawford family empire that Earl had been shut out of because of some stupid argument decades earlier. I was earning poverty wages cleaning properties that should have been part of my children's inheritance. The kids grew up barely seeing me during the week. I'd leave for work after tucking them into bed, and I'd get home after Earl had gotten them ready for school. Weekends were for catching up on sleep and trying to squeeze in all the mothering I'd missed during the week. Michael became serious and responsible early, helping with his younger siblings. Rebecca grew independent and determined, maybe too independent. Danny, the baby, seemed to always be reaching for attention I was too exhausted to give. When Earl died suddenly of a heart attack in 1995, Danny was only 15. I thought my world had ended. The funeral costs wiped out our small savings. The house payment became my responsibility alone. The kids needed stability and support during their grief, but I had to increase my hours just to keep us afloat. I was making $8.75 an hour by then, and Tom Peterson let me add 3 more buildings to my route, 50, 60, sometimes 70 hours a week. My hands were permanently stained with cleaning chemicals. My knees screamed by Thursday every week, but I kept going because that's what mothers do. Michael graduated high school and went to the University of Iowa on partial scholarship. I worked overtime to cover what the scholarship didn't. Rebecca got through dental hygiene school at Kirkwood Community College. More overtime, more buildings, more sleepless days. Danny Danny struggled after his father died, but I kept believing love and persistence would pull him through. By 2010, I was 60 years old and cleaning 15 buildings 6 nights a week for $11.25 an hour. My children were all adults with their own lives, but I was still the one they called when money got tight. Michael's insurance business had slow months. Rebecca's dental office job didn't pay as much as she'd hoped. Danny couldn't seem to hold a job for more than a few months. I found myself giving them money I couldn't afford to give, taking on extra buildings to help with their rent, their car payments, their children's expenses. The buildings kept getting bigger and more luxurious. Midwest commercial cleaning services expanded, and I expanded with it. By 2015, I was training new employees, managing supply orders, handling the most difficult and sensitive locations. Tom Peterson had retired, and his replacement, Sandra Mills, called me the backbone of this operation. I was 65 and should have been thinking about retirement, but how could I stop? The kids still needed help. My grandson, Tyler, Michael's boy, was having troubles at school, and Michael and his wife Jennifer couldn't afford the tutoring he needed. Rebecca was going through a divorce and needed help with legal fees. Danny was living in my basement again after losing another job. The arthritis started in 2017. At first, just stiffness in my hands on cold mornings, then pain in my knees that ibuprofen couldn't touch. By 2018, some mornings I could barely hold a mop. But I kept going because what choice did I have? Social Security wouldn't be enough to live on, and I had no retirement savings after decades of helping my children through their crises. What I didn't know was that Sandra Mills had been documenting my dedication for years. Every perfect inspection, every emergency call I'd answered, every extra mile I'd gone. She was preparing reports for someone I'd never heard of, Robert Crawford, the owner I'd never met, the uncle who'd built an empire while Earl struggled with day labor. Looking back now, I can see the signs I missed. The way Sandra would smile when she talked about the boss appreciating employees like you. The way she'd ask detailed questions about my family, my struggles, my dreams for my children. The way she'd shake her head when I'd mention working through pain or skipping doctor appointments because I couldn't afford the co-pays. I thought I was just a hard-working woman doing an honest job. I had no idea I was building a legacy that my own family had shut me out of. A legacy that was about to become the weapon I needed to teach my children what family really means. But first came the fall that changed everything. The first warning sign should have been Tyler. In March of 2019, I asked Michael about bringing Tyler over for his 18th birthday dinner. Michael got this strange look, panic mixed with anger, and said, "Mom, we've talked about this. Tyler's been gone for years. You need to stop bringing him up." Gone? Gone? Where? Every time I asked about my grandson, I got the same response. "It's too painful to discuss." Or, "Tyler's not part of our lives anymore." Or Rebecca's favorite, "Mom, you're getting confused again." But I wasn't confused. I remembered Tyler as a sweet little boy who loved my chocolate chip cookies and asked endless questions about everything. I remembered him being around until he was about 3 or 4, and then suddenly he wasn't. When I'd ask, they'd tell me he'd died, some childhood illness they couldn't bear to talk about. But if that was true, why couldn't I remember a funeral? Why were there no pictures, no grave to visit? The second warning sign was the money requests getting more aggressive and more frequent. Michael started calling every month with new emergencies. His insurance business was going through a rough patch. Could I help with his mortgage payment? Just this once? Then it was Rebecca needing help with her car payment, her credit card bills, her daughter's school expenses. "Mom, you know I'm good for it," she'd say, but she never was. Danny was the worst. He'd moved into my basement in 2018, claiming he just needed a few weeks to get back on his feet. Those few weeks turned into a year, then longer, with him eating my food, using my utilities, and contributing nothing while constantly hinting that I should help him start some new business venture. By summer 2019, I was giving away nearly half my income to my children's emergencies, while skipping my own doctor appointments because I couldn't afford the copays. I was eating peanut butter sandwiches for dinner so Danny could order pizza. I was wearing shoes with holes in them while helping Michael make his car payment. The arthritis was getting worse. Some mornings I'd wake up and my hands would be so stiff and painful I couldn't make a fist. My knees would lock up getting out of bed. But when I mentioned maybe cutting back on work hours, the panic from my children was immediate. "Mom, you can't retire yet," Michael would say. "What would you do with yourself?" Rebecca would add, "Work keeps you active, Mom. Sitting around would just make you sicker." What they meant was, "We need your money." The third warning sign was how they talked about my future. In August 2019, Michael brought up planning for the future during one of our Sunday dinners. He'd found brochures for Shady Oaks assisted living and spread them across my kitchen table like he was showing me vacation destinations. "Look at all these activities, Mom. Arts and crafts, bingo, movie nights. You'd make so many friends." "I'm not ready for a nursing home, Michael. I'm only 71 and I'm still working full-time." "It's not a nursing home, Mom. It's independent living. And the sooner you get on the waiting list, the better your chances of getting a nice room." Rebecca jumped in with her support. "Mom, it would take so much pressure off you. No more house maintenance, no more yard work. All your meals prepared, and the staff is trained to help with your arthritis." I looked around my little kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd bandaged their skinned knees, helped with homework, celebrated their birthdays. "This is my home. I've lived here for 15 years. "You? But Mom," Danny said from his permanent spot on my couch, "you're just rattling around in this big house all by yourself." Big house. It was a tiny 3-bedroom rental, and I wasn't alone. He was living in my basement rent-free. That's when I started paying attention to their conversations, when they thought I couldn't hear. Michael and Rebecca whispering in the living room about Mom's declining capacity and what happens when she can't work anymore. Danny on the phone with someone talking about the old lady and how he just needed to wait it out a little longer. The fourth warning sign was the sudden interest in my finances. Rebecca started asking detailed questions about my expenses, my Social Security projections, my work schedule. "Mom, you need to start planning better. Do you have any savings at all?" When I admitted my savings account had less than $1,000, her reaction wasn't concern for my welfare. It was panic about their own financial futures. Michael suggested I should consolidate my bills and maybe let him help manage my money. "You're working so hard, Mom. Let me take some of that burden off your shoulders." He wanted access to my checking account, my Social Security payments, even the small life insurance policy Earl had left me. "I can manage my own money, Michael." "I know you can, Mom, but you're getting older, and mistakes happen. Remember last month when you thought you'd lost your electric bill? I just want to help." I hadn't lost my electric bill. Danny had moved it off the kitchen counter when he'd spread out job applications he never actually filled out. But Michael was already rewriting history, creating a narrative of my incompetence that would justify taking control. The fifth and final warning sign was what happened when I fell. October 2019, I was cleaning the law offices on Collins Road when my knee just gave out completely. I went down hard on the marble floor, my cleaning cart crashing beside me. The pain was incredible. I genuinely thought I'd broken something. I managed to call Michael from the office phone, crying, asking him to come help me. "Mom, I can't leave work right now." "Can you call an ambulance?" "An ambulance? With no insurance?" "Michael, I just need help getting to my car." "Mom, if you're really hurt, you need professional medical attention. I can't be responsible for making it worse." I called Rebecca. Same response. I called Danny, who didn't answer at all. Finally, I called Sandra Mills, my supervisor, who drove over immediately and helped me to the emergency room. The x-rays showed no breaks, just severe inflammation, but the ER visit cost me $1,200 I didn't have. When I got home that night, limping and exhausted, Danny was in my kitchen eating a sandwich. "How was work, Mom?" He had no idea I'd been hurt. None of them had bothered to check on me. That's when I started seeing the pattern clearly. They needed me functional enough to keep sending money, but they were already planning for my disposal. The assisted living brochures, the questions about my finances, the suggestions that I was becoming incompetent, it was all preparation for the moment when they'd need to warehouse me somewhere convenient, while they figured out how to squeeze the last value out of my life. The arthritis kept getting worse through the fall. By November 2019, some days I could barely grip a mop handle. Sandra Mills was increasingly concerned, suggesting I consider early retirement, but how could I retire with $847 in savings and 3 adult children who still needed financial help? That's when the eviction notice arrived. My landlord, Mrs. Patterson, had sold the house to a developer who wanted to tear it down for condos. I had 30 days to find $1,200 for first month's rent somewhere else, plus security deposits, plus moving costs I couldn't possibly afford. When I told my children, their responses revealed everything I needed to know about their true characters. Michael: "Well, Mom, maybe this is the universe telling you it's time for that assisted living transition." Rebecca: "Mom, you've been talking about wanting less responsibility. This could be a blessing in disguise." Danny: "Don't worry, Mom, I'll help you pack." Help me pack to go where? None of them offered their spare bedrooms. None of them offered to help with moving costs. Michael had a 4-bedroom house in Des Moines. Rebecca had a 3-bedroom house in Waterloo. Even Danny, living in my basement, didn't suggest I could stay in my own house if he helped with rent. They were ready to watch me become homeless rather than inconvenience themselves. That's the moment I understood I'd raised 3 strangers who saw me as a resource to be depleted rather than a person to be loved. 47 years of sacrifice, and they were willing to throw me away the moment I became more burden than benefit. I was sitting at my kitchen table on November 14, 2019, staring at that eviction notice and trying to figure out how to tell Sandra Mills I couldn't afford to retire when the phone rang. The caller ID showed a Minneapolis number I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Crawford, this is James Morrison, attorney for the estate of Robert Crawford. I have some information that's going to change your life." Change my life? Honey, he had no idea how much. "Mrs. Crawford, you're going to want to sit down for this conversation." I was already sitting at my little kitchen table, staring at bills I couldn't pay, and an eviction notice that felt like a death sentence. But something in attorney James Morrison's voice made my stomach clench with a different kind of fear. "Mr. Morrison, if this is about debt collection or some legal trouble, I need to tell you right now that I don't have any money. I'm about to be evicted, and I can barely—" "Mrs. Crawford, please, I'm calling about an inheritance." Inheritance? The only person I could think of was maybe some distant relative of Earl's, but Earl's family had cut him off decades ago. "I think you have the wrong person. My husband's been dead for 24 years, and we weren't close to his family." "Ma'am, I'm calling about Robert Crawford's estate. He passed away 3 weeks ago, and he left very specific instructions about contacting you." Robert Crawford. Earl had mentioned that name maybe twice in 30 years of marriage, and never with anything but bitterness. His uncle? The one he fought with? Mr. Morrison, Earl and Robert hadn't spoken since before I even met Earl. If Robert left anything, it should go to his own children. "Mrs. Crawford, Robert never married. He had no children, and according to his will, he left his entire estate to the hardest working woman I never had the courage to meet, my brother's widow, Bonnie Jean Crawford." The words weren't making sense. His entire estate? What does that mean exactly? "Ma'am, Robert Crawford owned Midwest Commercial Cleaning Services, along with 11 other commercial cleaning companies across Iowa, Illinois, and Minnesota. He also owned most of the buildings those companies service. Are you familiar with Midwest Commercial Cleaning?" My hands started shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. I work for Midwest Commercial Cleaning. I've worked there for 47 years. "Yes, ma'am. Mr. Crawford was very aware of that. He has detailed reports about your employment dating back to 1972. According to his notes, you've been cleaning buildings owned by Crawford Properties for nearly 5 decades. and he considered you the most dedicated employee he'd ever had. The kitchen was spinning around me. 47 years. 47 years of scrubbing floors in buildings owned by Earl's uncle. 47 years of poverty wages while working for a family empire that Earl had been shut out of because of some stubborn pride. Mr. Morrison, I don't understand. What exactly am I inheriting? The total estate value is approximately $38 million, Mrs. Crawford. That includes the cleaning companies, 12 commercial properties, a diversified investment portfolio, and about $2 million in cash assets. $38 million. I couldn't breathe. I literally could not get air into my lungs. The eviction notice was sitting right there in front of me, demanding $200 I didn't have, and this man was telling me I'd inherited more money than I could comprehend. Mrs. Crawford, are you still there? Yes. I'm here. Mr. Morrison, are you absolutely certain about this? Because I'm 72 years old. I'm facing eviction, and I have $847 in my checking account. This seems impossible. Ma'am, I understand your shock. Robert left a personal letter for you that explains his reasoning. Would you like me to read it? Yes, please. I heard papers rustling, and then James Morrison's voice changed, becoming more formal as he read someone else's words. Dear Bonnie, I know you don't know me, but I've known about you for 47 years. When Earl married you, I was too proud and stubborn to welcome you into our family. I was angry about things that happened before you were even born, and I let that anger cost me the chance to know my brother and his beautiful family. I've watched from a distance as you worked harder than any person should have to work, raising 3 children alone after Earl died, never complaining, never asking for handouts, never giving up. I've gotten reports from every supervisor you've ever had, and they all say the same thing. Bonnie Crawford is gold. You've been cleaning my buildings with pride and dedication while I paid you poverty wages, and that shame has haunted me for decades. I could have reached out, could have offered help, could have made your life easier, but I was too much of a coward. This inheritance isn't charity, Bonnie. It's payment for 47 years of labor that made me wealthy while keeping you poor. It's also my apology for failing Earl, failing you, and failing those grandchildren I never got to meet. You earned every penny of this money, and I pray you'll use it to build the life you always deserved. I was crying so hard I could barely see. 47 years of wondering if I was working hard enough, sacrificing enough, doing enough for my children. And all that time, I'd been building someone else's empire while living in poverty. Mrs. Crawford, there's more. Robert also left detailed instructions about the inheritance. He wanted you to know that you've been cleaning your own buildings for decades. Every office, every medical center, every law firm on your route, Crawford Properties owns them all. My own buildings? Yes, ma'am. He has records showing that in 1987, you single-handedly saved the Mercy Medical Center account when their previous cleaning service was negligent. Your work there prevented a health department violation that would have cost the property management company hundreds of thousands of dollars. In 1993, you discovered a break-in at the Henderson Law offices and prevented a major theft. In 2001, you worked through a flood to keep the Commerce Bank building operational when other cleaning crews abandoned their posts. Each memory hit me like a physical blow. I remembered all of those moments, staying late to make sure everything was perfect, taking pride in doing excellent work, never realizing I was protecting my own family's assets. Mr. Morrison, my children, do they know about Robert? Do they know about the family business? According to Robert's notes, Earl never told them about the family wealth because of their estrangement. Robert assumed they knew nothing about Crawford Properties or their potential inheritance through their father's bloodline. My children had no idea. They'd been pressuring me toward assisted living and arguing over my tiny life insurance policy, never knowing they were potentially connected to a fortune that could have solved all their problems. But suddenly, thinking about Michael's calculated suggestions about Shady Oaks, Rebecca's questions about my finances, Danny's assumption that he could live off me indefinitely, I realized something that made my blood run cold. Mr. Morrison, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. When you investigated me for this inheritance, did you look into my family situation? Yes, ma'am. Robert requested a thorough background check to ensure you were who he thought you were. And what did you find? A long pause. Mrs. Crawford, I think we should discuss that in person. There are some complications regarding your grandchildren that you should know about. Complications regarding my grandchildren? What kind of complications? Ma'am, according to our investigation, you have a grandson named Tyler Crawford who's currently in the Iowa foster care system. He was placed there in 2006 when he was 4 years old. The world stopped completely. Tyler hadn't died. Tyler was alive. Tyler was in foster care. Mr. Morrison, that's impossible. My grandson Tyler died when he was a baby. My son told me. They said there was an illness. Mrs. Crawford, Tyler Crawford is very much alive. He's 17 years old, and he's been in various foster homes and group facilities for 13 years. According to court records, he was surrendered by his parents, Michael and Jennifer Crawford, when he was 4 years old. The reason given was inability to provide adequate care due to financial and emotional stress. I couldn't speak. I couldn't think. My sweet little Tyler, who used to help me make cookies and ask me to read him stories, had been alive all these years, living with strangers, growing up without family, while his parents told me he was dead. Mrs. Crawford, are you all right? They told me he died. They told me he died, and I mourned him. I've been mourning my grandson for 13 years, and he's been alive this whole time? I'm afraid so, ma'am. And there's more. According to Tyler's case file, he's asked about his grandmother repeatedly over the years. He remembers you. He's been told you didn't want contact with him. The phone slipped out of my hand and clattered onto the kitchen table. My children hadn't just abandoned me. They'd abandoned their own son and let me believe he was dead. They'd stolen 13 years of my relationship with my grandson, 13 years of his life when he could have been loved and cared for instead of shuttled between foster homes. I picked up the phone with trembling hands. Mr. Morrison, where is Tyler now? He's in a group home in Iowa City. Mrs. Crawford, I have to tell you. He's aging out of the foster care system in 6 months. When he turns 18 in March, he'll have no family support, no permanent housing, and very limited resources. My grandson was about to become homeless at 18 because his parents had thrown him away and lied about it for 13 years. If you're feeling the pain of this betrayal with me right now, if you're understanding how deep this cruelty goes, show your support. Hit that like button, comment if you've ever been lied to by people who were supposed to love you, and subscribe to Grandma's legacy, because we strong women need to stick together through the darkest moments of betrayal. But honey, this was just the beginning. Because when I inherited those $38 million, I didn't just get money. I got power. And I was about to use every bit of that power to teach my children what it feels like to be thrown away by the people who should love you most. The first thing I was going to do was find Tyler. The second thing was going to show my children exactly who they'd been dealing with all these years. They thought they were getting rid of a broken-down old cleaning lady. They had no idea they'd just awakened a grandmother with unlimited resources and absolutely nothing left to lose. The first call I made wasn't to my children. It was to Sandra Mills. Sandra, this is Bonnie. I need to know something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Did you know Robert Crawford was Earl's uncle? A long pause. Then, Bonnie, I've been waiting for this call for 3 weeks. Yes, I knew. I've known for years. Years? Sandra, I've been working for poverty wages for decades, and you knew I was family? Honey, it wasn't my secret to tell. Robert made me promise. But I've been documenting everything about your service, your dedication, your character. Every report I sent him about your work was really me trying to convince him to do right by you before it was too late. Did he know about Tyler? Did he know my grandson was alive in foster care? Robert knew everything, Bonnie. That's part of why he left you the inheritance. He said the Crawford family had failed that boy twice. Once when Earl was shut out of the family, and again when Tyler was abandoned by his own parents. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table making lists, planning, thinking through every detail of what I was about to do. By morning, I had a strategy that would accomplish 3 goals: rescue Tyler, teach my children the consequences of their cruelty, and build something meaningful with the wealth I'd inherited. On November 18, 2019, I drove to Iowa City to meet Tyler. The group home was a tired-looking building on the east side, housing 12 teenagers who'd aged out of traditional foster care. The social worker, Maria Santos, met me in the parking lot with a mixture of skepticism and hope. Mrs. Crawford, Tyler has been asking about his grandmother for years. But I have to tell you, he's been told repeatedly that his family didn't want him. This is going to be emotionally complicated. When Tyler walked into that conference room, my heart nearly stopped. He looked exactly like Earl at 17, tall, lanky, with those same kind eyes. But there was a wariness in his face that broke my heart, the careful distance of a child who'd learned not to trust promises. "Tyler, honey, I'm your grandmother, your dad's mom." He studied my face carefully. "You're not dead? Dead?" "No, sweetheart. I'm very much alive. I've been alive and missing you every single day since your parents told me you died when you were little." The confusion in his eyes turned to anger. "They told you I was dead?" "They told me you died from some childhood illness when you were about 3 years old. Tyler, I've been mourning you for 13 years. If I'd known you were alive, if I'd known you needed me, nothing in this world could have kept me from finding you." We sat in that sterile room for 3 hours while I told him about the inheritance, about discovering the lies, about my plans for the future. Tyler was smart, incredibly smart, and he listened carefully as I explained how his parents had abandoned both of us. "Grandma Bonnie," he said finally, "I remember you. I remember making cookies with you and sitting on your porch. I've been telling caseworkers about you for years, but they said you didn't want contact. Tyler, I want you to understand something very clearly. I didn't know you were alive, but even if I had been the poorest woman in Iowa, I would have found a way to take care of you. You are my grandson, and you belong with family." By December 1st, I had legal custody of Tyler and had withdrawn him from the group home. But more importantly, I'd spent those 2 weeks learning about the foster care system in Iowa and the dozens of kids who would age out with nowhere to go. "Tyler," I said, as we drove through Cedar Rapids looking at properties, "what if we could help other kids like you? Kids who are about to turn 18 with no family, no support, no place to go." His face lit up with the first real smile I'd seen from him. "You mean like a group home, but better?" "I mean like a real home, with people who choose to be family." That's when I found the Riverside Manor on Collins Road. 31 rooms, sitting empty since 2015, perfect bones, but needing extensive renovation. The asking price was $3.2 million, but I offered $2.1 million cash and closed in January 2020. The renovation took 6 months and another $800,000, but by July 2020, Crawford House for Tomorrow was ready. 24 bedrooms for teens aging out of foster care, common areas designed for studying and socializing, a commercial kitchen where kids could learn life skills, and an apartment where Tyler and I would live as house parents. Meanwhile, I was still working nights at Midwest Commercial Cleaning, keeping my inheritance secret from my children. I wanted to see how they'd treat me when they thought I was still desperate. The answer was exactly as cruel as I'd expected. In January 2020, when I told them I'd found temporary housing and wouldn't be needing assisted living after all, their disappointment was obvious. "Michael, Mom, you're just delaying the inevitable. You can't keep pushing yourself like this." "Rebecca, this is just going to make the transition harder later." "Danny, where are you even living now? You're being so secretive." I was staying in a hotel while the manor was being renovated, but I told them I'd found a small apartment. The truth was, I was testing them. Would they offer help? Would they show concern for my well-being? Would they demonstrate any genuine love? They failed every test. In March 2020, when I mentioned my arthritis was getting worse, Michael suggested I should consider disability benefits instead of working. Rebecca recommended accepting your limitations and downsizing my expectations for retirement. Danny actually suggested I should move in with some other old lady to split expenses. Not one of them offered to help. Not one offered their spare room. They were still waiting for me to conveniently disappear. In June 2020, I made my next strategic move. I contacted Dr. Sarah Chen, a family therapist in Iowa City who specialized in elder abuse and family dysfunction. I needed professional documentation of what my children were doing to me. Dr. Chen, I want you to understand what I'm dealing with, I explained during our first session. I need you to evaluate my mental capacity, my decision-making abilities, and the family dynamics with my children. I have a feeling they're going to challenge my competency soon, and I want professional assessment. Dr. Chen's evaluation was thorough and damning. Her report documented clear patterns of financial exploitation, emotional abandonment, and manipulative behavior from all three of my children. She also noted that I was mentally sharp, emotionally resilient, and demonstrating excellent judgment in protecting myself from further exploitation. By July 2020, Crawford House was operational with its first 12 residents. Tyler, now 18 and enrolled at Kirkwood Community College, was helping me coordinate services, manage schedules, and mentor younger kids. Watching him bloom from the withdrawn teenager I'd met in that group home into a confident young man was worth every penny I'd spent. But I still hadn't told my children anything. In August 2020, Rebecca called with her biggest financial crisis yet. "Mom, I'm behind on my mortgage. The dental office cut my hours because of COVID, and I might lose the house. Can you help?" "Rebecca, I'm working part-time now because of my arthritis. I don't have that kind of money." "Well, can you borrow against something? Take out a loan? Mom, this is my house, my kid's home." "Honey, I'm 72 years old with bad knees and no assets. No bank is going to loan me money." That's when she said it. "Mom, maybe it's time to consider selling Daddy's life insurance policy. I know it's only $15,000, but that would help with my mortgage. And honestly, what are you saving it for?" She wanted me to cash out the tiny life insurance policy Earl had left me, my only financial security, to pay her mortgage. After I'd been helping her with money for decades, she was willing to leave me with absolutely nothing. Michael was even worse. In September 2020, he called with a business opportunity that required a $25,000 investment. "Mom, I know you don't have that kind of money now, but you could take it as a loan against the house. This insurance agency expansion could set our whole family up for life." The house I was renting. The house I'd nearly been evicted from a year earlier. He wanted me to risk my housing for his business schemes. Danny was the most brazenly greedy. In October 2020, he actually suggested I should consider taking out a reverse mortgage on the house I didn't even own. "Mom, you could get maybe $50,000 or $60,000 and we could split it. I could finally get my landscaping business started and you'd have some money to live on." Split it? He wanted me to mortgage my fictional equity so he could start another failed business venture while I lived on the remainder. That's when I decided they'd had enough chances to demonstrate love, compassion, or basic decency. They'd failed every test. It was time for the reckoning. But first, I needed to create a public record of their behavior. On November 15, 2020, exactly 1 year after inheriting Robert's fortune, I started documenting everything on social media. I created TikTok account, a Bonnie Justice, and Instagram, R. Crawford Grandma, and I began telling my story. The first video was simple. "Hi everyone, I'm Bonnie, I'm 72, and I want to tell you about how my children treated me when they thought I was poor." I posted videos showing the eviction notice, the calls demanding money, the suggestions about assisted living. I recorded their voicemails asking for financial help. I shared Dr. Chen's professional assessment of their behavior, but I still didn't mention the inheritance. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Thousands of comments from older women sharing similar stories, messages of support, requests for updates. My follower count grew from 0 to 50,000 in 2 months. My children's reaction was predictable panic. Michael called, furious. "Mom, you're embarrassing the whole family. Take those videos down." "Michael, I'm just telling the truth about how you've treated me. You're making us look like monsters." "Honey, I'm not making you look like anything. I'm showing exactly who you are." Rebecca was even more direct. "Mom, if you don't stop this social media nonsense, we're going to have to consider guardianship proceedings. You're clearly not thinking rationally." There it was, the threat I'd been waiting for. They were going to try to have me declared incompetent so they could control my decisions and my tiny assets. That's when I decided it was time to show them exactly who they'd been threatening. On January 15th, 2021, I posted the video that changed everything. My children want to have me declared incompetent so they can control my life. Let me show you what they're really after. And then I revealed Crawford House for tomorrow, my $38 million inheritance, and the 24 teenagers who called me Grandma Bonnie. I showed them Tyler, alive, thriving, and furious about 13 years of lies. I shared Robert Crawford's letter explaining how I'd earned every penny through decades of undervalued labor. The video got 2.3 million views in the first 24 hours. But more importantly, it got my children's attention in a way nothing else ever had. Suddenly, they were very concerned about my well-being. The phone started ringing at 6 a.m. on January 16, 2021, and it didn't stop for 3 days. Michael was first. "Mom, I saw your video. I can't believe you didn't tell us about the inheritance. We're family. We should have been the first to know." Family. After a year of treating me like a burden they needed to warehouse, now we were family. "Michael, I've been managing a group home for foster kids for 6 months. You never once asked where I was living or how I was supporting myself. You were too busy asking me for money I didn't have." "Mom, you have to understand, we were worried about you. We thought you were struggling." I was struggling. I was facing eviction, living on 8.47 hours, and working despite crippling arthritis. Where was your concern then? Rebecca called an hour later, crying. "Mom, I had no idea you had this kind of money. I've been so stressed about my finances, and all this time you could have helped us." "Rebecca, I offered help when I thought I was poor. I gave you money I couldn't afford to give. You took it without question and never asked how I was managing." "But Mom, this is different. This is life-changing money. We could pay off our houses, start college funds for the grandkids." "What grandkids, Rebecca? You mean Tyler, the grandson you told me was dead?" Silence. Then, "Mom, that situation was complicated. You don't understand what we were going through. I understand that you threw away a 4-year-old child and let me grieve him for 13 years while he grew up in foster care." Danny showed up at Crawford House that afternoon without calling, driving a U-Haul truck. He walked into my office like he owned the place, grinning and spreading his arms wide. "Mom, look at this place. This is incredible. I had no idea you were sitting on this kind of money." "Hello, Danny. You're trespassing on private property." "Mom, don't be like that. I'm here to help. I can move my stuff into one of these rooms and help you manage this place. You need family around you." "I have family around me. 24 kids who treat me with respect and love." "Mom, those aren't your real family. We're your real family." Tyler walked into the office at that moment, 6 feet tall, confident, wearing his Kirkwood Community College sweatshirt. Danny's face went white. Tyler, you're supposed to be dead?" Tyler's voice was ice cold. "Yeah, Dad. That's what you told Grandma Bonnie. That's what you told everyone." The confrontation that followed was everything I'd been waiting for. Danny, stammering excuses about impossible circumstances and what was best for everyone. Tyler, calmly describing 13 years of foster care, 13 years of asking about his grandmother. 13 years of being told his family didn't want him. Dad, do you know what it's like to turn 18 with no family? Do you know what it's like to age out of the system with no one to call, no one to help you, nowhere to go for Christmas or birthdays or when you're scared? Danny actually tried to justify it. Tyler, you don't understand. We were young. We were broke. We couldn't handle. You were 30, and you weren't too broke to keep asking Grandma Bonnie for money year after year while she thought I was dead. By evening, all 3 of my children were at Crawford House, along with Michael's wife Jennifer, Rebecca's teenage daughter Emma, and Danny's latest girlfriend Tanya. They'd clearly coordinated their approach, a united family front designed to overwhelm me emotionally. Mom, Michael said, taking charge like always, we need to talk about this situation. This inheritance, this group home, Tyler being alive, it's a lot to process. What exactly needs to be processed, Michael? Well, for starters, you're taking on a huge responsibility with all these foster kids. That's a lot of stress for someone your age. Jennifer jumped in. Mrs. Crawford, we're worried about you being taken advantage of. These kids, they might see you as an easy target because of your wealth. I looked around the room at my children and their enablers, then at Tyler standing quietly by the door, and I realized this was the moment I'd been preparing for. Let me tell you what I see, I said, standing up from my desk. I see 3 people who abandoned me when they thought I was poor and desperate. I see 3 people who suggested assisted living when I couldn't afford rent. I see 3 people who took my money for years while contributing nothing to my well-being. And now that you know I'm wealthy, suddenly you're concerned about my welfare? Mom, that's not fair, Rebecca said. We've always loved you. Rebecca, you recommended therapy so I could learn to accept your boundaries when I was facing eviction. You suggested I cash out Daddy's life insurance to pay your mortgage. That's love? Mom, we were all struggling financially. I was struggling more than any of you, and not one of you offered to help. Tyler has been living with me for 8 months. Not one of you asked where I moved or how I was managing. You didn't care as long as I wasn't asking you for help. Danny tried a different approach. Mom, okay, maybe we made mistakes, but we're here now. We want to be part of this. We want to help with the kids, help with the foundation. You want access to the money, Danny, just like you've always wanted access to any money I had. That's when Michael played his trump card. Mom, we've consulted with an attorney. There are some legal concerns about this situation. What kind of legal concerns? Questions about whether someone your age should be making such major financial decisions without family input. Questions about whether you're being unduly influenced by Tyler and these foster kids. Jennifer nodded seriously. Mrs. Crawford, there are documented cases of elderly people being manipulated into giving away their estates. We just want to make sure you're protected. They were threatening guardianship proceedings. Again, but this time, I was ready. Michael, let me save you some legal fees. I've been evaluated by Dr. Sarah Chen, a family therapist who specializes in elder abuse and family dysfunction. Would you like to know what her assessment says? I pulled out Dr. Chen's report and began reading. Mrs. Crawford demonstrates excellent cognitive function, sound judgment, and appropriate decision-making capabilities. Her choice to create a residential facility for aging-out foster youth shows remarkable compassion and social awareness. However, Mrs. Crawford's adult children demonstrate concerning patterns of financial exploitation, emotional manipulation, and abandonment behavior that are consistent with elder abuse. The room went completely silent. Dr. Chen also notes that attempting to have me declared incompetent while simultaneously seeking access to my inheritance would likely be viewed by courts as further evidence of exploitative behavior. Rebecca started crying. Mom, we're not trying to exploit you. We just want to be part of your life. Where was that desire when you thought I had nothing to offer you? Tyler spoke up from the doorway. I can answer that question, Grandma Bonnie. They were waiting for you to die so they could inherit whatever little bit you had left. Michael stood up angrily. Tyler, you have no right to speak about family business. You haven't been part of this family for years. Because you threw me away when I was 4 years old. That was different. That was a difficult situation. That was abandonment. And now you're trying to abandon Grandma Bonnie too, except she has money now, so instead of throwing her away, you want to control her. Emma, Rebecca's daughter, had been sitting quietly through all of this, but now she looked at her mother with horror. Mom, Tyler is my cousin? My cousin has been alive this whole time, and you told me he was dead? Rebecca's face crumpled. Emma, you don't understand. We were protecting you from what? From having a cousin? Mom, I used to cry about Tyler dying. I lit candles for him on his birthday every year. That's when I realized the cruelty had affected more than just Tyler and me. Emma, who would have been Tyler's closest cousin in age, had been mourning him unnecessarily for most of her childhood. Emma, I said gently, Tyler is very much alive, and he's been asking about his family, including you, for years. Emma looked between Tyler and her mother, then stood up and walked over to him. I'm sorry, she said simply. I'm sorry they did this to you. I'm sorry I believed them. Tyler hugged his cousin, the first family embrace he'd had from his generation in 13 years. The adults in the room were witnessing something they'd destroyed through their lies and cruelty, genuine family connection based on love instead of financial expectation. Michael tried to regain control. This is very touching, but we still need to discuss the practical aspects of this situation. Mom, you can't just shut us out because you're angry about past mistakes. Michael, they weren't mistakes. They were choices. You chose to suggest assisted living when I needed help. You chose to ask for loans when I was facing eviction. You chose to abandon Tyler and lie about his death. You chose to treat me like a burden instead of a person worthy of love. So what are you saying? That we're not welcome in your life anymore? I looked around the room at these people who shared my DNA but had never shared my values, and I made the most important decision of my new life. I'm saying that family is earned, not inherited, and you haven't earned it. But I wasn't done yet. I had one more surprise that was going to test their true intentions once and for all. I have a proposal for you, I announced to my 3 children still sitting in my Crawford House office. You want to be part of my life? You want access to this family you've suddenly rediscovered? Here are my terms. Michael leaned forward, probably expecting some kind of negotiation about money management or inheritance planning. He had no idea what was coming. Each of you will work here at Crawford House for 18 months, unpaid. You'll do maintenance, cleaning, food service, the same kind of work I did for 47 years while you lived comfortable lives. You'll attend family therapy with Dr. Chen every week to address your abandonment and manipulation patterns. You'll publicly acknowledge what you did to Tyler and what you did to me. And at the end of 18 months, if you've demonstrated genuine change and earned the trust of these kids, we can discuss having a relationship. The silence lasted nearly a full minute. Danny spoke first. Mom, I can't work for free for 18 months. I have expenses, I need income. You lived in my basement rent-free for 2 years while I was facing eviction. You can figure out your expenses. Rebecca was shaking her head. Mom, this is punitive. This isn't how families work. Rebecca, families don't abandon 4-year-old children and lie about their deaths for 13 years. Families don't recommend assisted living for elderly mothers facing homelessness. You want to learn how families work? Start here. Michael tried his lawyer voice. Mom, what you're describing is essentially indentured servitude. You can't legally require... I'm not requiring anything, Michael. I'm offering you an opportunity to earn something you lost through your own choices. You can walk away right now and never come back. That door is always open. And if we don't agree to this, then you get nothing. No money, no relationship, no access to Tyler, no role in my life. You can go back to treating me like the burden you've always seen me as, except now I have the resources to build a life without you. Jennifer whispered something to Michael, probably calculating the potential inheritance they'd be giving up. Rebecca kept staring at Tyler like she couldn't believe he was real. Danny was looking around the mansion, clearly measuring square footage and property values. "What about inheritance?" Michael finally asked. "What about our children's college funds, their futures?" "Michael, your future and your children's futures are your responsibility, just like mine was when you suggested I should accept living in poverty." Emma, who'd been listening to all this, spoke up. "Grandma Bonnie, what Tyler went through, what they did to him, that's not okay." "No, Emma, it's not okay, but your mom and uncles have 18 months to prove they understand that and want to make it right." Tyler stepped forward. "Grandma Bonnie, can I say something?" I nodded. "Dad, Aunt Rebecca, Uncle Michael, I don't hate you. I'm angry and I'm hurt, but I don't hate you. I've learned something living here with Grandma Bonnie and these other kids. Families can be rebuilt, but only with people who choose to do the work. If you're willing to do the work, really do the work, then maybe we can be family again." Rebecca was crying again. "Tyler, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry we made those choices." "Aunt Rebecca, sorry is just words. Grandma Bonnie is offering you 18 months to show whether you mean them." That's when Michael's mask slipped completely. "Mom, this is ridiculous. We're your children. We shouldn't have to earn inheritance that's rightfully ours." "Rightfully yours? Michael, what have you done to earn this money? I worked for it. I earned it through 47 years of labor while you lived comfortable lives funded by my sacrifice. You're not entitled to the result of work you never did. We're entitled to it because we're your children. Tyler is my grandson, and you threw him away. Being family by blood doesn't guarantee anything. Love, respect, and commitment, that's what makes family." Michael stood up, his face red with anger. "Fine, we'll see about this. We'll see what a court says about elderly people making irrational financial decisions under the influence of manipulative foster kids." "Michael," I said calmly, "I hope you do take this to court. I hope you challenge my competency publicly, because I have Dr. Chen's evaluation. I have financial records showing decades of responsible money management. I have testimonials from Tyler and 24 other kids whose lives have been transformed by Crawford House. And I have recorded evidence of your abandonment and financial exploitation. Please, by all means, make this a public legal battle." He was trapped, and he knew it. Any legal challenge would expose their treatment of me and Tyler to public scrutiny, and they'd already seen how effective my social media presence could be. Jennifer tugged on his arm. "Michael, let's go. We need to think about this." They left in a convoy, Michael and Jennifer in their BMW, Rebecca in her Honda, Danny in the beat-up pickup he'd been driving for 3 years. Not one of them said goodbye to Tyler. Not one of them acknowledged the other kids who'd been watching this family drama unfold in their home. But Emma stayed. "Grandma Bonnie, can I stay and visit with Tyler? My mom can pick me up later." "Of course, sweetheart. Tyler, why don't you show Emma around and introduce her to some of the other residents?" As they left to explore Crawford House together, I realized that redemption might be possible for the next generation, even if their parents chose bitterness over growth. Over the following weeks, my social media following exploded. The video of me confronting my children and revealing Tyler got 5.2 million views. Comments poured in from adult children, elderly parents, foster kids, and families dealing with similar betrayals. I started getting interview requests from magazines, podcasts, and local television stations. In February 2021, Cedar Rapids Gazette reporter Jennifer Walsh wrote a feature story titled "Local Cleaning Lady Inherits Millions, Saves Foster Kids." The article went viral nationally, picked up by Associated Press, and shared by news outlets across the country. The story focused on the foster care crisis, the need for transitional housing for aging-out teens, and the irony of a woman who'd been abandoned by her own children, creating a family for other people's abandoned children. The publicity brought unexpected support. Kirkwood Community College offered scholarships for Crawford House residents. Local businesses started donating supplies and services. The Iowa Department of Human Services asked me to consult on foster care policy reform. But most importantly, the publicity brought more kids who needed help. By March 2021, we were at full capacity with 24 residents, and I was planning expansion. Meanwhile, my children were learning what it felt like to be on the receiving end of public judgment. Michael's insurance agency got negative reviews from clients who'd seen the news coverage. Rebecca faced questions at work about her treatment of her son. Danny discovered that his reputation for mooching off his elderly mother had made him unemployable in Cedar Rapids. In April 2021, Rebecca made the first move toward reconciliation. She showed up at Crawford House on a Tuesday afternoon, wearing work clothes and carrying cleaning supplies. "Mom, I want to take your deal. You want to work here for 18 months? I want to earn my way back into Tyler's life, into your life. I want to understand what I did wrong and learn how to be better." I studied her face carefully. "Rebecca, this isn't about the inheritance. You understand that? Even if you complete 18 months of work and therapy, that doesn't guarantee you'll inherit anything. I know, this is about Tyler, about Emma having her cousin back, about trying to deserve forgiveness. And the other conditions? Family therapy with Dr. Chen? Public acknowledgement of your behavior?" She took a deep breath. "I've already made an appointment with Dr. Chen. And I want to make a video for your social media apologizing to Tyler and to you. I want people to know I understand what I did was wrong." That was the beginning of Rebecca's transformation. She worked in our kitchen 5 days a week, learned the stories of our residents, attended therapy sessions where she faced painful truths about her choices, and slowly began building a genuine relationship with Tyler. Danny took longer. He didn't contact me until June 2021, and his first approach was to try negotiating the terms. "Mom, 18 months is too long. What if I did 6 months? Danny, Tyler spent 13 years believing his family was dead. You can commit to 18 months of honest work." It took him until August to finally accept the full terms, and his adjustment was the hardest. Danny had spent decades avoiding responsibility, and suddenly he was expected to show up on time, work without supervision, and think about other people's needs. Michael never came back. In September 2021, he sent a lawyer's letter demanding his rightful inheritance and challenging my mental competency. The legal battle lasted 3 months and cost him $85,000 in attorney fees. He lost spectacularly when Dr. Chen testified about his patterns of financial exploitation, when Tyler described 13 years of abandonment, and when I presented evidence of my successful management of a multi-million-dollar organization serving vulnerable youth. The judge's final comment became local legend. "Mr. Crawford, your mother has demonstrated more sound judgment and social responsibility in 2 years than you've shown in this courtroom today. Her competency is not in question. Your character, however, raises serious concerns." By Christmas 2021, Crawford House had become the most successful transitional living program in Iowa. Rebecca was working her way toward earning Tyler's forgiveness and Emma's respect. Danny was slowly learning what it meant to contribute instead of just taking. And I was experiencing something I'd never had before, a family built on choice, respect, and mutual support instead of obligation and guilt. The kids at Crawford House didn't call me Grandma Bonnie because they had to. They called me that because I'd earned it by showing up for them when everyone else had given up. That's what real family looks like. But the story wasn't over yet. Because 18 months was almost up, and it was time to find out who had really learned what family means. Today is December 15th, 2022, and I'm sitting here in my kitchen at Crawford House watching Tyler help 3 of our newest residents with their college applications. He's 20 now, studying business administration at the University of Iowa, and planning to expand the Crawford House model across the Midwest. When I see him like this, confident, compassionate, focused on building something meaningful, I know that every dollar of Robert's inheritance has been put to its highest purpose. Rebecca completed her 18 months of work and therapy in October. The woman who showed up in April 2021 with cleaning supplies was broken and defensive. The woman who finished the program was someone I'd never met before, humble, self-aware, and genuinely committed to making amends. She's continuing to work here part-time while rebuilding her relationship with Tyler and Emma. She earned her way back into our family by proving she understood what family actually means. Danny finished his program in February 2022, but it took him longer to truly change. He'd spend the first year trying to find shortcuts, looking for ways to get credit without doing the work. But somewhere around month 10, watching these foster kids overcome obstacles he'd never faced, something shifted in him. He started showing up early, staying late, genuinely caring about the residents instead of just completing his required hours. He's now our maintenance supervisor and finally holding down a steady job for the first time in his adult life. Michael never came back. He spent the last year trying to turn family members against me, spreading stories about my mental decline and the manipulative foster kids who are stealing his inheritance. His wife Jennifer left him in March 2022, taking their children to live with her parents in Minnesota. His insurance agency failed 6 months later. Last I heard, he was living in a studio apartment in Des Moines, still consulting lawyers about ways to challenge my will. The saddest part about Michael is that he had every opportunity to choose love over money, relationship over entitlement. He could be here right now, working alongside his son, building something meaningful, earning his way back into a family that would have welcomed his genuine repentance. Instead, he chose bitterness, and it cost him everything: his marriage, his business, his children, and any chance of reconciliation with Tyler. Emma is a sophomore at the University of Iowa now, studying social work because she wants to help kids in foster care. She spends her weekends here at Crawford House, and her relationship with Tyler has become one of the brightest parts of our family story. She often tells people that finding out Tyler was alive was like getting a brother back from the dead. Crawford House now operates 3 facilities across Iowa, serving 72 teenagers who are aging out of foster care. We have a 94% success rate for high school graduation, a 78% college enrollment rate, and a 100% housing stability rate for our graduates. The Iowa Department of Human Services has asked us to consult on statewide foster care reform, and we're working with legislators to change policies that leave kids vulnerable when they turn 18. My social media following has grown to 1.2 million people across TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. I post regularly about the kids' successes, the challenges of foster care reform, and lessons about family, forgiveness, and finding purpose in your later years. The comments section has become a community where older adults share their stories of family betrayal and recovery, where foster kids connect with mentors, where people find hope in their darkest moments. But the numbers don't tell the real story. The real story is Marcus, who came to us at 17 with anger management issues and is now studying criminal justice because he wants to help kids like himself. It's Destiny, who aged out of the system pregnant and alone, and now has her own apartment and a job at a daycare center while raising her beautiful daughter. It's Cameron, who was told he'd never amount to anything, and just graduated from auto mechanic school with a job waiting at the best shop in Cedar Rapids. These kids taught me something my own children never understood. Family isn't about sharing blood or expecting inheritance. Family is about showing up when someone needs you, celebrating their successes, supporting them through failures, and choosing to love them even when it's inconvenient. If this story of survival and transformation has touched your heart, like this video right now, tell me in the comments what gave you courage in your own darkest moments, and subscribe to Grandma's Legacy, because every grandmother deserves to have her voice heard and her story valued. I think about Robert Crawford often, the uncle-in-law I never met who saw my worth when my own children couldn't. His letter said the inheritance wasn't charity, it was payment for 47 years of undervalued labor. But I think it was more than that. I think it was the universe's way of putting resources into the hands of someone who would use them to build love instead of hoard wealth. The irony isn't lost on me that my children's cruelty led directly to their own exclusion from the fortune they thought they deserved. If they'd treated me with basic decency when I was poor, if they'd shown genuine love when I needed support, if they'd made different choices about Tyler, they would be part of this legacy now. Instead, Their selfishness created the very circumstances that taught me who deserved my love and my resources. I'm 74 years old now, and I wake up every morning in a house full of young people who choose to call me family. I go to sleep every night, knowing that the hardest chapters of my life led to the most meaningful ones. I spent decades believing that family love was something you earned through sacrifice and service. Now I understand that real family love is something you receive from people who value you for who you are, not what you can provide. To anyone listening to this who feels thrown away by people who should love you, whether you're an elderly parent being discarded by adult children, a young person aging out of foster care, or someone facing betrayal from family, I want you to know that your value doesn't depend on their recognition. Your worth isn't determined by their treatment. And your family doesn't have to be the people who share your DNA. Sometimes the people who abandon you are doing you a favor. They're removing themselves from your life so you can find the people who will truly choose you. Tyler and I were both thrown away by the same people, and that shared abandonment led us to each other and to this community of chosen family that has become the greatest blessing of both our lives. The Crawford family name will continue through the work we do here, through the lives we change, through the example we set of what love in action actually looks like. That's a legacy worth building, and it's a legacy that can't be inherited, only earned through daily choices to show up, care, and serve others. Justice doesn't always look like revenge. Sometimes it looks like building something so beautiful and meaningful that the people who hurt you realize exactly what they lost when they chose cruelty over love. And that, honey, is exactly what happened here. My children thought they were discarding a broken-down cleaning lady who had nothing left to offer. Instead, they awakened a grandmother with unlimited resources, unshakable determination, and absolutely nothing left to lose. The cleaning lady they threw away owned the building she'd been scrubbing for 47 years. The burden they tried to warehouse in assisted living became the founder of one of the most successful foster care programs in Iowa. The woman they saw as worthless became a voice for forgotten children and discarded elders across the country. They had no idea what they were throwing away, but I certainly learned what I was worth.